you, Vincent. Right, guys, I'm just introducing myself for those of you who haven't heard me. I'm Andrew Kerr. I'm the Licensed Immigration Advisor for Australia and New Zealand. This is our last webinar tonight on Australia for the year. We do them every 3 weeks, but we've decided to split them. We did New Zealand last week, and we're doing New Zealand this week. We did New Zealand last week, and we're doing Australia this week. Welcome to Ruan. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Rushan. Thank you, Jacques. Devrapan, thank you. We're going to knock it over really quickly tonight. I'm going to be inviting Desiree Lindeque, who is our operations manager in New Zealand, just to talk about some new changes to the subclass 482, which is a work visa for Australia. But what I was just saying before, if you could or couldn't hear me, was just make sure you're going to get advice from a licensed agent. Whether you use an agent or you do it yourself is completely, of course, up to you as the consumer. But if you're going to use an agent, make sure they're licensed. You can check their numbers, my MAR and IEA, my Australian and New Zealand licensing numbers on the front page there. You can check if a person's licensed or not. It is not necessarily legally required for an Australian advisor to be licensed if they don't have offices in Australia. However, you should use a licensed advisor. Why? Because if you pay a licensed advisor, your money's held in trust and you have recourse. So if the advisor, of course, makes an error or makes a mistake and they're not licensed, you have zero recourse at all. Whereas if your advisor is licensed, then, of course, you have the ability to be able to, question what they've done. And if they can't fix what they've done, of course, if it has been an error from the advisor, then you can report them to MARA, the Migration Agents Registration Association. Clearly we don't want to be reported. In my career, I've had one report from New Zealand and one from Australia, and I won them both because, with all due respect, the clients were just being unrealistic. But you clearly don't want to be reported to your governing body, because your governing body is the one that issues you your license, and those licenses have to be issued every year. I'm going to be asking, sorry, I did send Desiree a message, but she hasn't actually listened to it on WhatsApp. I want to invite Desiree in to our meeting just shortly, because I wanted to sort of her to bring you up to speed with some announcements that were done about 10 days ago regarding the subclass 482 visa. So thank you to Des for joining us as always. She's our operations manager based in our Auckland office. Which means she handles the operations for Australia and New Zealand from our New Zealand office. Welcome to Peter Lemmer. Peter is our New Zealand MD, and he is the one that's heavily involved, of course, in the job search training. Thanks, Des. That goes on for not only New Zealand, where it's essential, because 99% of people that are immigrating to New Zealand require a job up front. So for the last 7 years, Peter has developed the 4-pillar method, which he'll talk about in a minute. But the difference with Australia is when you get your visas, most of you are still going to want a job. And the job search training method works whether it's in New Zealand or in Australia. So I will be inviting Desiree and Peter to the screen shortly. I just wanted to say a thank you to our partners. We're partnered with the banks and the moving companies and the finance houses, both in our home country that I'm based in, South Africa, and of course in countries like New Zealand and Australia. We're partnered with everybody from, shifting your pets to shifting money to English testing centres to selling homes. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, I'm quite mature. I've been doing this for 30 years. We've successfully immigrated over 17,000 families in my career anyway, with a strike rate of over 99%. So as I said, if you're going to use an advisor, make sure they're licensed, and also make sure, please, that you understand what you're getting for the money that you're purchasing. Every immigration consultancy has different business models. We've decided to go the whole hog, and that's why we call ourselves an immigration and relocation specialist, which not only do we immigrate you and do all the paperwork necessary for the visas to be granted to yourself and your family, but also we have a relocation division, which helps you with everything from opening a bank account to taking a pet with you, to shifting funds, to meeting at airports, accommodation, etc. And of course, we have a job search division, which is headed up by Peter Lemmer, and his team and the job search training, which goes along, of course, with helping you find that all-important job offer, whether it be in Australia, of course, or New Zealand. I'm a member of NZAMI, which is New Zealand Association for Migration and Investment, and the Migration Institute of Australia. So I'm just going to jump through to a couple of slides. So about Network, we've been around for 30 years. It was a UK-based company, started way, way back. I joined the company in 1990 and had an opportunity to purchase a South African franchise in 1993, so I did. As you can see here, we're going to do Australia tonight. We did New Zealand last week, and in the new year, if you look on our website, you'll be able to see by the end of this week, we'll have our webinars put up for next year. And we're also doing face-to-face seminars, which start on the 17th of January as well. We're using one of our co-partners venues for that, Bidoffs, the moving company in Johannesburg, Durban, and Pretoria, and Cape Town. Relocation, clearly, if you need any information on relocation, you would just email us. And all our emails are at networkmigration.com. So mine is Andrew. Peter's is Peter at networkmigration.com. Desiree is Desiree at networkmigration. Rose, who runs our relocation division, is Rose at networkmigration.com. So it's pretty straightforward. Okay, so we are up to, we've got about just under 100 people listening to us tonight, or booked to listen, but of course with load shedding, that's normally halved. But please be aware that we will be sending you a recording of this webinar. Everybody that's booked will be sending you a recording of this webinar tomorrow. Ruan will handle that so you can actually listen to what's going on. Very interactive. As I said, we're going to knock this over the next 15, 20 minutes because, you know, we'd normally take an hour, but we talk about 2 countries. I've spent 10 minutes on, thanks, Desiree. I've spent 10 minutes on, of course, introducing ourselves. Clearly, Peter's, if you want job search and to find out about the job search training, thank you, Desiree. Peter at networkmigration.com. So you'd email Peter if you want the job search training advice, Desiree, or myself if you're wanting immigration advice. And there's my email at the end. I want you to take screenshots or photos, please, of the slides I'm going to be showing you. I'm only showing you 2 or 3, and there's a reason for that. That's me a couple of years ago. Australia. Even though I'm a Kiwi, I lived in Australia for 10 years prior to coming to Africa. So I've lived in I lived in New Zealand for 20 odd years, in Australia for 10 odd years, and I've been at South Africa now for 33 years. And I'm proud to say, as I said earlier, we've immigrated over 17,000 families, but it doesn't have to be from Africa anymore. Yes, 15 years ago, technology was nowhere near as sharp and as spot on as it is today. So we've got clients all over the world, you know, from as far away as the UK and Northern Europe to America, China, Philippines, you know, right throughout Asia. So it doesn't matter where you're around the world, we're able to assist you. We've got clients sitting as close to New Zealand like Fiji, for example. We've got clients in Manila. So it really doesn't matter. In my time in Australia, I fell in love with Australia. It's a beautiful country. It's extremely large, one of the largest continents in the world, of course. It is a 26 odd million people in Australia, extremely diverse cities, from Melbourne to Sydney to Perth to Brisbane to Darwin to Adelaide. They're very, very different cities. I've spent a lot of time traveling throughout Australia, so I've been to pretty much every city in Australia except Adelaide. But I believe Adelaide is beautiful. There's not a visa on the planet we do not do. It doesn't matter. Tonight we're going to be talking about skilled migrant and a little bit on the work visas, because I'm going to invite Desiree in to talk about the 482s, which is a work visa into Australia. But skilled migrant, student, family, business, work, investor, spousal, you might be going on a short-term visa on a contract. You might want to go and study, as I've said here, student visas, etc. So there really isn't a visa on the planet that we can't assist you with, even if it's just a general visit you want. Yeah, we can clearly assist you with that. Be a bit careful with visitors' visas nowadays. Australia and New Zealand are being very strict on the reasons that you're traveling to the country, and you've got to tell them why and what your purposes are and what your intentions are when you're on shore. And I'm noticing, not so much from us, of course, but a lot of people are coming to me after the fact. You know, they wanted to go to visit their family in Australia, but they've been rejected. Or we had a case recently, it was not my client, where the entire family lodged their application and their 22-year-old daughter was rejected. and they want to go and visit family. So, but it's only because the people just didn't know what they were doing. So, countries are becoming extremely difficult to get into, and they don't want you coming over on a holiday and then sticking up your hand and sort of saying, I claim asylum or something ridiculous. And of course, it depends on which country you come from, because, there are high-risk countries, and I'm not going to go into them tonight, but clearly if you come from a so-called higher-risk countries, getting visitors' visas are even more difficult. I'm going to be talking mainly about skilled migrant categories visas tonight. The current lodgement mark is 65 points. This is one slide I'm going to show you. Please take a screenshot of that, or a phone shot if you've got your phone with you. And when you send me, Ruan very kindly put in, so did Desiree, put in my email address there. If you want to be assessed, and remember, all our assessments are free. All the information we give you is completely free. So if you want to be assessed, I'll just make this on a bigger screen for you so you can have a look at it for a second. Sorry. If you want to be assessed for migration purposes, then I would just strongly suggest that, there we are. There we are. That's a bigger screen for you. So I would strongly suggest that you just send us an email with your questions and queries. And if you're wanting to be assessed as a skilled migrant, then just attach your CVs, please, both yourselves and your spouses, or yourself and your partner. And the reason I need the CVs is I need to know what qualifications you've got, if any, what work experience you've got, how old you are, which is not on most modern CVs. So just in a separate paragraph, when you attach your queries and questions and CVs, please indicate the size of your family, i.e. the structures, husband, wife, 3 children, and the ages of all of you in the family, please. And one of the major reasons for that, as you can see on the top left of the slide here, the cutoff age for a skilled migrant application into Australia is 45 years old. A business visa is 55. So if you're a businessman or woman and you want information on Australia, business or investor, please just drop me an email and I'll arrange a free consultation with you to run you through it. But as you can see, on a skilled migrant visa, your age limits are 45 years old. You'll notice on the top right, you get points for qualifications as well, doctorate, bachelor's, diploma, or trade. Australia is extremely likely to accept you unlikely to accept you if you don't have a qualification. In fact, most occupations require you to have a qualification. Unlike New Zealand, where you can get away sometimes without having a formal qualification, Australia, you can pretty much forget it. You're assessed by assessing authorities in Australia, and there's only 2, which is Institute of Management and Leadership and the Australian Computer Society, which will assess you based on your work experience and not your qualifications. But be careful with that, because if you're only being assessed on work experience, you can't claim qualifications at all. You can definitely claim qualifications for work experience, which is down the bottom right there, and the work experience, of course, needs to be related to your qualification, or if you're a senior manager or a computer person, then it needs to be related to your skill set. You get points for language, as you can see on the left there. Competent, proficient, and superior. Excuse me, coughing. And you'll be sitting in London now saying, "Oh, I'm exempt from the language test," or you're in America or Canada or wherever. Quite right, you are exempt, but being exempt means you can't claim the points, and it's highly likely that you will be required to have the points as well. And then, of course, you get bonus points for a regional application of 491, which I'll talk about quickly in a minute. Your spouse gives you extra points for English. And if your spouse's qualifications and work experience are on the same skills list as you, and there's 2 main ones, then you can claim extra points for that. Before I invite the guys in, I just want to show you the other slide. So there are 3 main visas that you can apply for under the general skilled migrant category for Australia. One is called a subclass 189. That's what I call the blue chip visa, where your occupation and qualifications are on what the Australians call the medium and long-term strategic skills shortage list. You need a minimum 65 to be able to load an application onto that list, and that doesn't guarantee you selection. Because what Australia does is they make it occupational dependent. For example, I have not seen an accountant selected on anything less than 80 since 2016. The same with IT professionals. Most of you are being selected on 80 or 85. So you might be sitting there calculating your points thinking, hey, yay, I'm sitting on 65 or 70 and you're an accountant. The likelihood of you being selected is virtually zero. So what happens is if you're not on the medium and long-term strategic list, which is subclass 189, you can get sponsorship points on a 190 and a 491. A 190 is state nominated, where your occupation is coming up on the states, and there are 8 states and territories in Australia, and the state allows you to, of course, apply for and receive a nomination from that state. Well, clearly you have to lodge at the right time. You have to judge it because the states only get certain allocations from federal government, and it's normally 1, 2, or 3 times a year that they get those allocations. And you've got to be monitoring it. Clearly, that's what my team does, is monitor it on behalf of their clients. And as and when your occupation comes up on the states, we will notify you. And in fact, your application will be ready. So we're literally just needing your go to lodge it. And to get an application ready, you need your qualifications assessed. Remember, there's over 30 assessing authorities in Australia, and you and your spouse, if you're in a relationship, need to have sat the English test. You can also do a 491, which is a new visa that came out in November 2019, just before COVID. A 491 gives you 15 bonus points. You can be sponsored by a family member by a 491. The family member needs to be either your mother, father, sister, brother, son, daughter, uncle, aunt, niece, nephew, or first cousin, and they need to live in anywhere in Australia except Sydney, Brisbane, Melbourne. I wouldn't use a 491 family sponsorship because the processing times are extremely long. You're talking 6 to 9 years if you use a family member to sponsor you. But you can do a 491 state nomination, which gives you 15 bonus points. And that basically means you're issued with a 5-year visa. And in that 5 years, for 3 consecutive years, the main applicant must earn $70,000 a year and cannot at any stage in those 3 years live or work in Sydney, Brisbane, or Melbourne. You can live anywhere else in Australia except those 3 cities. Okay, so when I assess you, I will assess you for all 3. Subclass 189 if you're eligible, and of course 190 and 491s if you're eligible. So hopefully you've taken screenshots of these pages. You'll notice you get bonus points if you studied in Australia, sponsored by the state or territories between 5 to 15. If you're a single applicant, you get 10 bonus points. Clearly, if your spouse is an Australian citizen, you can get 10 points. But frankly, if your spouse is an Australian citizen, you'd do a spousal visa. Even though they're more expensive than any other visa, you'd still probably do a spousal visa, providing you meet the living together and relationship requirements. And there, of course, as I mentioned here, you get competent points for your English. So I'm just going to escape that screen, which comes back to this one. And I'm just going to, and I don't know why that happened. It's too bloody right that this happened at the wrong time. Share something, screen, stage is empty. Okay, where did we go here with the screens? Video, screen, slide, escape, stage is empty, video, share. I love technology, as you can see. Okay, guys, there we are. Right, so unable service file, template, blah, 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 unable to play. I don't want to play it, and I don't want to play that as well. So let's go back to the window here. Righty, guys. So Des, Peter, I'm going to invite you both in. Des, I'm going to invite you in first, if that's fine, and I can find you somewhere. And then Peter, I'll invite you in to talk about job search. So just give me a second. D-E-S-I-R-E. Desiree, invite to wing. As I said, guys, Desiree Lindeque, she's our ops manager. Immigrated to New Zealand 9 months ago with her family, loving family, and is running our operations from New Zealand. Hey, Des.
Hey, how are you?
I'm okay. I'm clearly a bit vague and whatever tonight, last webinar of the year. So I just want to invite you on, Des, to first of all comment on anything that I may have missed, because it could be, of course, heaps. But I'm joking. I don't think it is. But to talk about the 482, which we got a bit of a surprise with 10 days ago, and what that visa is, and it used to be quite strict, but they're talking about relaxing it a bit.
Yeah, so first I just want to make the differentiation. So with the 491, which is the skilled visas that Andrew obviously just spoke about, you have your 189, 190, and your 491. On your 491, you get the benefits of having access to Medicare, and you also have access to subsidized schooling for your children. But you have to stay on that 491 for 3 years to have access to your pathway to residency. You cannot apply for any other PR visa. That is a condition on that visa. So what they've done now is they've introduced, previously you could apply for a 482. It was a 2-year visa if you were on the short-term skills list, and it was a 4-year visa if you were on the medium to long-term skills list. And when you were on that 2-year visa, you had to be offshore in order to apply for a new 482 if you only got the 2-year visa. And you had to go offshore, apply for another 2-year visa, and you couldn't apply for residency via the 186, meaning that on the 482, you would have to have found a 189, 190, or 491 visa option. What they changed 10 days ago, what Andrew has just mentioned, is they announced that anyone on the short-term, sorry, Andrew, I see people are saying they can't hear.
Really? Mike is, and now, can you hear me, Des?
I can hear you.
I'm not looking at the chats. Give me a second. Can hear you. Can hear you. I can't hear. Devrapan's can't hearing. Please refresh the page if you cannot hear. Okay, so I think, Des, it's just now we can hear you. Okay.
Okay.
Do you want to start again?
I'll just do a quick recap. So basically on the 491, which is your skilled visa, after you've done your skills assessment, you've done your English test, you've done your points test on your EOI, and you're selected for that visa by the relevant state or region, you're on that visa for 3 years before you can apply under the subclass 191 for your permanent residency. That visa has the benefits of subsidized education and Medicare, access to Medicare. You cannot apply for any other PR visa while you're on that visa, just simply because that's one of the conditions of getting a 491 to be able to get the benefits. So what they did 10 days ago is the 482, which is sponsored by an employer in Australia once you get a job offer. Previously, if you were on the short-term skills list, you only got a 2-year visa. Occupations that are on the medium to long-term skills list, they get a 4-year visa, and then it was quite easy for them to meet the 3-year living requirement in order to apply for residency. But what they did is with the 2-year visas, they've now moved the requirement to have to be offshore to reapply for a new visa, meaning that you can be 2 years in and then you can apply for another 2 years while you're still in Australia. So no need to be offshore at the time. The other exciting thing that they changed is they now gave it a pathway to residency, meaning that even if you're on the short-term list, you can now apply for a 186, which is your resident visa pathway, and that only requires that you have worked for a nominated employer in the occupation that you have been nominated for a period of 2 years. The other exciting change that they've made is previously, if you were over the age of 45, the only way to access an age exemption was that you had to work at the high remuneration threshold for a period of 3 years. They've moved that down to 2 years. So that means that if you are over the age of 45 and you are working as a mechanical engineer and you're earning at that high remuneration threshold, which I believe is 172 now, Andrew.
162, it is.
162. So it's 162,000 per annum. So if you're earning that for a period of 2 years, you can then apply for that age exemption. So anyone over the age of 45 earning at that threshold for 2 consecutive years in 3 years, in the last 3 years before you apply for the 186, can apply for an age waiver. So those are the changes that they've made in terms of the 482. Just something to remember, I mentioned the 491 has benefits such as Medicare and schooling. You do not get those benefits on the 482 because it is a temporary work visa. So while you are able to apply for other residency pathways on the 482, so if you're on the 482, you can still do a 189, you can still do a 190. On the 491, you cannot apply for any other PR visa. So just the difference between the two.
Thanks, Des. And then just maybe a comment before I invite Peter. I'm not sure if Peter's there. I have actually invited him. Are you there, Peter? It's telling me he's on screen, but I can't see him. But anyway, I'll uninvite him, invite him again. But just prior to me inviting Peter, and he can talk about the job hunting process and job training, Australia is behind, and in their processing, not only with, of course. Oh, hey, Peter. With most of the processing, it used to sort of take 9 to 12 months to get into Australia. Can you just perhaps explain why it's taking longer at the moment?
So, in a nutshell, with COVID and for a period of time, people not being processed, they actually closed the processing of the visa application. So it's caused a really big backlog that everyone's trying to catch up on. VetAssess, for example, a skills assessing authority for most occupations, they used to take an average of 8 to 12 weeks. They're now taking 16 to 20 weeks. So everyone is playing a bit of catch up. The last selection round, if anyone's been following, for 189s were in May. And that's simply because Australia has already met their quota with the applications that were in the system already and put on hold. So they had so many applications that were backlogged that they were able to meet their immigration quota just by simply working through their backlog, which is why the states got a very small number or a very small portion of their allocations as they work through that backlog. And there's applications that are not granted. It means that there'll be certain spaces available and they will then offer the states more allocations. But in the meantime, everything is taking longer, unfortunately. They're working through that backlog, and I do expect that the next financial year, from July next year onwards, we'll probably see a lot more selections. We're unsure, as all advisors are unsure at this stage, when the next selection will be. They're supposed to be every 3 months, but like I just mentioned, the last allocation was in May this year, and there hasn't been any information about the next selection as they work through that current backlog that they have.
Are they still nominating per state, Des?
Yes, they are. Victoria just had a selection a couple of days ago, and Victoria is one of the states that will actually let you know that you had a selection. So the nice thing about Victoria, they'll tell you that there was a selection and that you either were or were not successful. Other states will have selections and they won't let you know. So most of the occupations that are being selected from the information that we're getting are teachers, engineers, and anyone in the health sector. So your nurses, your doctors in any specialization, they're still getting selected. But I think because of the very limited number of nominations that each state have received, they are being very careful about who they're selecting, so that they have available selections or spots for those people that they need in those critical sectors.
Yeah, and I must admit I haven't read the whole document because it's extensive. I don't know if Caitlin let you know. Caitlin's one of our senior file managers, guys. Caitlin sent me a document today that I haven't read because it's literally extensive on potential changes to Australian immigration next year.
So those are proposed changes at this stage. So nothing's been legislated.
Have you read it?
No, not yet.
Oh.
But as and when as and when anything becomes legislated, we'll obviously let the public know. We let our clients know via newsletters. So anyone that is subscribed for our newsletters will get the information as and when it becomes legislated.
Yeah, and that pretty much means, guys, that anybody that's logged on to anything or had a pathway sent to them or are logged on to a webinar, we don't send out rubbish emails. So if you do, we're not trying to sell you anything, clearly. We're just keeping you updated as to what's going on with Australasia. In other words, down under. Thanks, Des. You look like you're wrapped up nice and warm there. Peter's not wrapped up nice and warm, but you look like you're wrapped up nice and warm. It's 9 o'clock at night here nearly, and it's 27 degrees. So we're in the middle of a heat wave. And you both know what South African heat waves are like. They're bloody hot. And I look forward to seeing you guys in about 10 days' time, I think. Or what is it? 13, 10 days' time. It's coming up really quickly. So I'm really looking forward to seeing you both. So, guys, I'm going to end with Peter tonight. You know, I've talked about the fact, contact us. If you want information, contact us. Contact myself or Desiree. But if you want information on the job training and how to, what the best way to find a job, then email Peter directly. If you engage our services, the job training is built into our package prices. But you might already have a visa, for example. You might be using another agent that you're reasonably happy with and don't necessarily want to change. And we're not asking you to change. But clearly, when it comes to that all-important process of finding a job, it is all Peter has been doing for our clients over the last 7 years. Not only, of course, in New Zealand, where it's predominantly 100% necessary to get a job as the main applicant, but also in Australia. So, Peter, I'm going to leave the floor to you. And then once you finish, we're pretty much going to say goodbye and log off.
Okay, thanks, Andrew. Hi, everybody. Yeah, I think Australia is a bit different to New Zealand. New Zealand, you have to have a job offer before you get the work visa. While in Australia, you get the visa first, you land there, and then you've got to start looking for a job. But now I think when you land and you only start your job search process and starting to network and find out what jobs are available, you're still spending your hard-earned money in your country from origin, let's say South Africa or wherever in the world you are. Now, the quicker you can get a job, the quicker you're starting to earn dollars in Australia. So it's quite wise to start doing sort of the groundwork and the networking and the job searching before you land in Australia. And what we do for our clients is that we train you up on how to network from your home office, desk, sofa, wherever you want, via LinkedIn. And we train you on the 4-pillar method of how to start networking and connecting with people in the country you're moving to. So the 4 pillars consists of 4 sort of main drivers that we use. The first one is how to search engine optimize your profile. We focus on LinkedIn because LinkedIn is a business tool used in New Zealand and Australia. It's not a job search tool, it's actually a business tool. And we get your profile optimized, set up correctly, looking very and highly professional. Then the second pillar we train you on is then to go and to teach you how to connect with people in Australia. If you know which city we're going to, we focus the search just on that city of where you're moving to or the region that you're moving to. And you can connect at 5 different levels. It's not just 1 or 2 levels, there's 5 different levels. The third pillar we train you on is then how to market and brand yourself. So before you even arrive, people start getting to know who you are, what you do, and what your value add will be to their company. We also then teach you how to go and apply for jobs. We then help you to set up a profile if you want to set up a profile on these job these job advertising portals. And then I think the 4th section is sort of the most important section, is that the interview training, because you can have all the skills in the world, but if you don't convey those skills across correctly, the employer's not going to understand what value add you're going to be offering the company. So we do interview, and for New Zealand, we do culture training, understand the difference in cultures. As Andrew said, that this service, if you only want to do our job search training, I can quote you separately just for job search training, and you can do this. This you can apply anywhere in the world. So if you're sitting in, let's say, Hong Kong and you want to find work in Malaysia or something, you can use this anywhere in the world. What I teach you, you can apply anywhere, even in your home country. You can get a better job. And I find 80% of our clients start getting offered jobs within their own country because they've learned that because they start their LinkedIn profile set up so well, they start getting noticed in the market. But yeah, if you want a separate quotation just to do the job search training or coaching, as we call it sometimes, send me an email on peter@networkmigration.com. And I can give you a quotation just for the job search training. And with this, we also throw in relocation information. So we help you how to wrap up your life in the country that you are leaving from, and just thinking of a lot of different things that you need to do before you leave. And then we also help you with settling in advice. If you're coming to New Zealand, we help you with settling in advice. And if we need to do a bit of research in Australia, we can do a bit of research further in Australia. You know, how to rent a home, how to buy cars, etc. What your driver's licenses, tax numbers, those kind of things. So we do the whole relocation assistance with you as well.
Yeah, question, just before we finish, guys. Thanks, Peter. Just before we finish, a question. Des, do you think that the new rules around the 482 then will mean a lot more people maybe looking for work in Australia and to find a subclass 482 sponsor?
I think that was the intention. The workforce, as I understand it, is still trying to recover from COVID, and they are really looking for people to get there now. So your processing time on your 482 is generally 3 to 5 months, whereas for a 189, 190, and a 491, you're looking at 11 to 16 months. So even people coming over on permanent visas are going to take a lot longer to enter the workforce, and they're not going to be addressing those skills needs when they need them. So the 482, I think, is going to address that problem, because you're going to get a job offer, you're going to be there in 3 to 5 months, and you're already being told you're not just going to work here temporarily, you're going to work here for 2 years, and you'll have an option to do permanent residency if you stay with your employer.
Which is fantastic. And that, Peter, brings it back to you. Clearly, one advantage we've got as a company, everybody, is the fact that if, let's say, Australia wasn't working, I mean, you were sitting in the pool and you weren't being selected or whatever, we can actually switch your application to New Zealand. But what it does mean, Peter, is they might want to look at doing the job search training for Australia faster or earlier in the process, because you can job hunt then in Australasia, Australia or New Zealand, because if you happen to get an interested party in Australia, with the 482 now being or having a pathway to residency that is way easier than it currently was, they just might want to consider, because the job search training is going to be valuable whether you're going to New Zealand or Australia anyway. All right, but with the but you see where I'm coming from? I mean, it's just could be.
So an interesting, yeah. So an interesting observation on that is that we have a few clients that we've handed over for job search when we put the EOI in, and obviously, as you know, the selection's not happening. So they do have job offers, and they're going over on the 482, and they're just going to wait until the 189 or 190 is selected. You can run both concurrently. As I said before, in a 482, you're not limited to applying for other permanent resident visas. If they get selected, fantastic. That means that we can do PR a bit sooner. If they're not selected, then that's absolutely okay, because after 2 years, they're going to be applying for PR in any way.
Thanks, Des. And what that means, ladies and gentlemen, is if you do go to Peter first, for example, and you're thinking, right, let's get this job hunting underway, or job hunting and job training underway, and you've used Peter and you've paid NMS New Zealand directly for the job search training, be it Australia or New Zealand, and you then decide to use Network Migration's whole package, whatever you've paid NMS New Zealand or Peter's branch will be deducted from your fees when it comes to the whole package, and you need to know that. Or you might say, as I said before, you're using another agent, or just want to look at the job market. You might just want to use Peter directly without using NMS. So we have those sorts of facilities and packages available to you, ladies and gentlemen. Anything you need to say, guys, before we sign off and go?
Yeah, I think also just a lot of, I mean, Australia is the larger country, but a lot of the corporates' head offices are in Australia, but they have branches in New Zealand. So sometimes when you're searching Australia, New Zealand options may pop up. So that's one of the advantages. It's sort of our two countries are sometimes seen as one, with the large corporates and the banks especially, and even smaller businesses. So yeah, it's an advantage to utilize both, and you can just switch from one country to the other in a flash, just on job searching. So, and the Seek, the job search or the job portal, or the what do you call it? The tool is Seek, is an Australian company, but it is Seek New Zealand and Seek Australia, and jobs are advertised for both countries. So on Seek, you can just see everything you want.
Cool. Well, that's about it, guys. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for attending. We got up to 50 tonight, and that's quite good in the middle of load shedding. So congrats, everybody, for joining. Don't forget, you will get a copy of this tomorrow. And please, if you've got any questions on job hunting, email peter@networkmigration.com. And if it's just general questions and queries and you want to be assessed, email either Desiree@networkmigration.com or me at Andrew@networkmigration.com. Peter, Des, have a fantastic day, guys. Look forward to chatting later in the week. We'll see you soon. And thank you for, as always, attending this evening and giving the support, potential support to potential clients coming on board.
Thanks, Andy. Bye.
Thank you.
And thanks, everybody. Thanks for having a lovely evening. And thank you, Ruan, for setting it up. Have a great day, guys. We'll chat soon. Ciao, everybody.
Happy Christmas and you, everybody.
Bye.
Yeah, happy Christmas and safe travels during the festive season to you all. Okay. Thanks, guys.
Okay, bye.
Bye.